Most of us have been taught to look at life completely backwards. So let me explain. You'll look at happening what's around you and you will decide what it means. So we'll look at your bank account, your relationship, your job, the message that didn't come through, or that opportunity that seemed to disappear into the middle of nowhere, the thing that we thought would have happened by now, but guess what? It hasn't. And what happens is that we use all of this as evidence for where we are and where we think our life is going. But what if what you're looking at isn't reality? What if it's just the symbol? So I was listening to Neville Goddard recently, and he was talking about the difference between the literal mind and the mystical mind. And he said something that really struck a chord with me. He said that the literal mind has eyes, but it only sees symbols. It has ears, but it only hears the event. And I think this explains why so many of us get trapped by our circumstances. We see something happen and immediately we give it a meaning. So someone rejects you and your literal mind goes, oh, they don't want me. Something doesn't work out and your literal mind goes, I failed. You don't have the money yet and your literal mind goes, I'm not successful. Or you're single and your literal mind says, you're unwanted. Or you haven't got that opportunity and you think you're not good enough. But we think we're seeing reality when in actual fact we're not. We're seeing an event and then we are attaching a story to it. And they are two completely different things. Now, Neville talks about developing what he calls the mystical mind. And the mystical mind, it sees the exact same world. We're not pretending here. It has the same eyes, it has the same ears, it has the same experiences, but it sees something completely different because it sees beyond the symbols, beyond the mirror. It understands that the external world is not telling you who you are. It is showing you something. And that distinction is massive. It is a game changer because once you understand that, you stop allowing every external event to determine your internal state. And this is where I think lots of people have misunderstood manifestation. They think it's pretending something isn't happening or is happening. So maybe your relationship is ended, but you're pretending it hasn't yet. Or maybe your business is struggling, but you pretend you've got millions in the bank. Or something painful happens and you keep telling yourself that it's fine and everything is wonderful. But that's not what I mean. You can absolutely acknowledge what is happening without letting it define you. That is completely different. It's a different state. The event is real, but the meaning you give the event is absolutely yours. And most of us have spent our entire lives doing the exact opposite. Something happens outside of us and we immediately change who we are inside. Think about how quickly you do it. You've probably done it today already. You wake up feeling brilliant, then you see an email and your whole state changes. Someone doesn't reply to a message and it brings you down and your whole state changes. You see somebody out there on social media doing better than you and again, your state changes. Or someone criticizes you, your state changes. Suddenly, the outside world is controlling your entire internal experience. Then we wonder why we feel so powerless. We've handed our power to the symbol. Now, consciousness comes first. The state comes first. And that means instead of constantly asking, why is this happening? You start asking, who am I being in relation to what is happening? And this is a completely different way to live your life. Because if I believe I'm successful only when I have external proof of success, I'll spend my whole life waiting. If I believe I'm only worthy when somebody chooses me, I will spend my whole life waiting. If I believe I'm only confident when people approve of me, I will spend my whole life waiting. And that is the literal mind. It's always waiting for something to happen in time. When I get the job, I'll be successful. When I meet someone, I'll feel loved. When I have the money, I'll feel secure. When my body looks different, I'll feel confident or I'll feel good enough. When the business grows, I'll finally believe in myself. When they recognize me, yeah, I'll know I've made it. Everything is later. Everything is conditional. Everything depends on the symbol appearing first. But the mystical view turns that completely around. You assume the desired state now. You live from it now. You stop asking the external world for permission to become who you want to be. And this is the part that I think is really difficult for people to grasp because we've been taught that change happens in a straight line. First, something happens, then we react, then we change. But what I'm trying to say here is that the internal world is the thing that changes first. The change of state is instantaneous in consciousness, even if the physical world takes time to catch up. And I love that idea because it means that you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait to get the new job to become the person that belongs in that room. You don't have to wait for the relationship to feel worthy of love. You don't have to wait for the money to stop identifying yourself as someone who is always struggling. You don't have to wait for everybody else to believe in you before you believe in yourself. You assume the state right now and you live from the feeling is important of it now. Not because you're trying to trick the universe into giving you something, but because you have stopped allowing circumstances to tell you who you are. Only you can do that. And there's another part of this that I think is really important. You don't necessarily have to name the state behind every symbol. You don't need to obsessively analyze everything. What does this mean? Why did this happen? Is this a sign? Did I manifest this? What is the universe trying to tell me? Because sometimes that becomes another form of giving your power away because you're still staring at the outside world looking desperately for answers. Maybe the point is not to decode every single thing that happens. Maybe the whole point is to become so rooted in you have decided to be that everything happening around you becomes secondary. You can observe it. You can respond to it. You can take action, but you don't become, and this completely changes your relationship with time as well. Because the literal mind says, it hasn't happened yet, you need proof, whereas the mystical mind says, that doesn't change who I am. The literal mind will literally say, where is it? And the mystical mind will say, I don't need to chase the evidence. The literal mind, it will need proof before it believes, whereas the mystical mind understands that the internal state comes first. The symbol appears when the time is ripe, but the reality of the state can be yours right now. And whether you take this literally or whether you use this psychologically, I think there is something incredibly powerful in that. Because imagine how differently you would live your life if you stopped using every single circumstance as evidence about yourself. Imagine if rejection was simply redirection, not proof that you're unlovable. Imagine if a business failure was simply something that just didn't work out, not proof that you weren't capable. Imagine if somebody else's opinion was just their opinion, not an instruction about who you should become. Imagine if the thing that hasn't happened yet simply hasn't happened yet, instead of becoming evidence that it never will. How much lighter do you think life would become? Because this is what I think it means to see beyond the symbol. You stop confusing circumstances with identity. You stop confusing events with meaning. You stop confusing what you can currently see with everything that is possible. And you still live in the real world. You still make decisions. You still take action. But your inner state is no longer being dragged down by every single thing that happens outside of you. And perhaps that's the real shift. Stop asking the world to show you who you are. Decide right now who you are, then meet the world from there. Because maybe the life you want doesn't begin when the symbol finally appears. Maybe it begins the moment you stop waiting for it and the moment you truly believe in who you are.